In this example, we're going to learn to divide decimals with terminating decimal quotients using long division. So this is probably how you learned how to divide decimals in your earlier years. So we're going to rewrite the division statements with a whole number divisor, then divide using long division. Okay. So the idea is we want to make the divisor the second number a whole number, because we're going to be dividing in to this dividend, and we don't want to have to say how many times does 3/10 go into 1/10. Okay, so it can get complicated, but we're very good at thinking of, if you know your multiplication facts, how many times does 3 go into some number. So starting with your divisor, move it as many places as you need to make it a whole number. In this case, I would move it one place to the right. And you also have to do this with the dividend. So we're going to rewrite this as 1.2 divided by 3. Okay? And this is essentially equivalent to making that equivalent division problem like we did in the last video. We're changing the unit fraction so they line up. Now with long division, remember we took the first number and we put it under the long division bar. And the second number, this is the dividend, the second number, the divisor, goes on the outside. Now we're going to pay attention to place value. So we're going to say 3 goes into 0 times. And as soon as you hit the decimal point, when you're going to use a number after it, put the decimal up in the quotient area. So remember, the quotient or the answer is what we end up with up here. And so 3 didn't go into 1, so now we say 3 goes into 12. Well, granted, this is 12/10, but we don't have to think of it that way. We can just 3 goes into 12 4 times, and we put a 4 up here. 3 times 4 is 12. We subtract and get 0, so this decimal has terminated after just one step. And notice our answer is 4/10, so 0.4. Let's try this with the next one. Well, notice, I'm going to write this a little bit bigger with a little more space. To make our divisor a whole number, we'd have to move 1 2 places. So we have to do the same thing to 12. The decimal, which we're not writing with whole numbers, we'll add that on and move it 2 places. So our equivalent division problem is 1200 divided by 3. So notice this division problem doesn't even have any decimals in it anymore. We've eliminated the decimals. We're going to divide 1200 by 3. 3 goes into 12 4 times. 3 times 4 is 12, so we subtract. Let me get rid of that line. That's not a division line. I was just underlining 12. And we have 0. Now, since we haven't crossed over the decimal point, that would be here. So here, once we crossed over the decimal and got 0, we were done. But there's still more place values here, and we have to fill them in because it makes a difference. So we know this is more than 4 times. So we bring down the 0. 3 goes into 0 times, and 3 goes into 0 times. So our quotient is 400. So there are 400 copies of 3/100ths in 12. Now this is the method we're going to use in the next video for decimals that don't terminate, but I just want to show you one connection between decimal multiplication and decimal division that you can use to simplify or quicken the process in these problems. It does not work if your decimal repeats and goes on forever. Okay, so remember that when we multiply decimals, so we could actually check this division by multiplying 0.3 times 0.4. And we said with multiplying decimals, we multiply the numbers as if there's no decimals. Use a different pen color. We count the number of decimals after the decimal point in each case. So this would be 1 plus 1 equals 2. And then here, we move it over 2 places. So we have the result 0.12. And notice that's our divisor. Well, how can we reverse this process to quicken this division? Well, let me write the original problem again so we can see it. Well, 12 hundredths has 2 decimal places and 3/10 has 1 decimal place. Now, notice here in the multiplication we had 1 plus 1 equals 2. Here with the division we could say 2 minus 1, we could work in the other direction, equals 1. So we're going to have 1 digit after the decimal place. So 12 divided by 3, ignoring the decimals, equals 4. And you're going to move the decimal 1 place to the left, which gives you 0.4. So let's see if this also works here. It's going to be a little bit different, but we'll have the same idea. So we'll look at the divisor times the quotient to check our answer to make sure it's 12. Well, 3 times 400 is 1200. And here we had 2 numbers after the decimal place, and here we had 0. So we'd move this a total of 2 decimal places to the left. 1, 2. Okay. Now reversing this process, we could say, well, I have 12 divided by 0.03. This has 0 numbers after the decimal place. Let's make that a different color. This has 2 decimals after the decimal place. So we would have to move this. Now I know this seems a little funky. We could divide 12 by 3 and get 4, and move the decimal place -2. Now I know that sounds weird, but then look at 4 and look at 400 and think about what -2 may mean. Okay, so that means we need to move it to the right 2 places. When we had the positive results, we moved it to the left. So move this to the right 2 places and we get 400. Okay, so that's a nice process to use, and you could practice this in your homework problems so that you don't have to set up as much long division. This isn't too hard, but once you get the hang of this trick, basically subtracting the decimals, if it's negative, you move to the right. If it's positive, you move to the left. Okay, and it's easy to get the directions reversed and think I moved the decimal, I can't remember which way. Well, when that happens, don't just guess. Try to think of the problem itself and whether your quotient would be larger or smaller. So here, how many 300ths are in 12? Well, that's definitely more than 1. I would say that's a lot. So think of 3 yellow squares. You're filling them up till you get to 12 whole units. So that's going to be a larger number, 400. Whereas here, when we have 12 hundredths divided by 3/10, how many 3/10 are in 12 hundredths? Well, 3/10 is larger than 12 hundredths. So I know that I'm going to have a number less than 1, and you move the decimal in this direction to get a 0.4.